The courtroom sat in suffocating silence. The air was thick with tension, as the bailiff's boots echoed across the floor. Judge Halberd, grim-faced and rigid, raised the gavel. With a thunderous crack he slammed it down. The court finds the defendant not guilty. Gasps rippled like shock waves. Prosecutor Arya Mallory didn't move, her eyes fixed on the man who had just escaped conviction. Marcus Vale, mid-40s, cold-eyed, smirked beneath the halo of fluorescent lights. Behind him, a mother sobbed. Arya's jaw clenched. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself. She had fought for 2 years, chasing threads through corruption, silence, and fear. And now, it had all evaporated in one blow. A reporter's camera flash cracked the silence again. The truth hadn't died, it had been buried. And everyone in that room had helped dig the grave. Arya turned slowly toward the doors. The case no one wanted had just swallowed her whole. Outside the courthouse, thunderclouds choked the sky as cameras hounded Arya's steps. Microphones lunged like weapons. "Do you plan to appeal?" one shouted. She didn't answer. Her heels struck the pavement like gunfire. Arya's face remained carved in stone, even as her fingers trembled at her sides. Flashes lit the storm-dark sidewalk. Reporters didn't want truth, they wanted blood. Her assistant, Jonah, a lanky man in his early 30s with nervous eyes, tried to cut a path. "We should get to the car," he muttered. Arya finally turned to the cameras. Justice didn't fail," she said. It was suffocated. The word silenced the mob. Just for a second. Then chaos surged again. As the car door slammed behind her, Arya knew one thing: this wasn't over. It was only the beginning. Something deeper, more sinister, was waiting in the shadows. The ride back was silent. Arya stared out the tinted window, city lights streaking past like ghosts. Jonah gripped the wheel tighter than necessary. "You did everything you could," he said. Arya didn't respond. Her thoughts twisted, around the evidence that disappeared, the witness that never showed. She remembered the woman who came to her months ago, scared, whispering about sealed files and threats. That woman had vanished. Arya replayed every missed clue, every silence from higher-ups, every warning to drop the case. It wasn't a loss, she finally muttered. It was sabotage. Jonah glanced at her in the mirror but said nothing. Outside, the rain began to fall harder. Somewhere behind the noise of tires and glass, a scream buried itself inside Arya's mind, and refused to leave. Arya sat alone in her apartment, rain streaking down the windows behind her. The room was dim, except for the glow of scattered documents and an old desk lamp. Red circles and notes covered the walls like a conspiracy map. In the center, a photo of Marcus Vale stared back at her. She picked it up, gripping the edges. "What are you hiding?" she whispered. The photo crumpled slightly in her hand. Her phone buzzed. "No ID," she answered. A raspy voice. "You got too close. Stay down, or disappear like the others." The line went dead. Arya didn't flinch. She dropped the phone, eyes locking on a name she had underlined weeks ago, Nadine Roth. No one else had dared mention her. Until now. Arya circled the name twice. "Time to dig," she said. In a cramped police records basement, Arya descended shaky stairs as fluorescent lights flickered above. She moved past forgotten boxes and dusty shelves until she found the file. Roth, Nadine, closed. She opened it. Pages were missing. What remained were blacked-out lines and a photo of a woman in her 30s, eyes wide with fear. Suddenly, a noise. Footsteps. Arya froze. The light above her flickered and died. Silence. Then, a voice, low and too close. "You don't belong here." Arya spun, but no one was visible. She backed away, file clutched tight, breath shallow. Whoever was protecting Vale wasn't just rich or powerful. They were watching her, and they were already 2 steps ahead. Arya stood over her desk, Nadine Roth's half-redacted file spread before her like a crime scene. She tapped a pen nervously, scanning each line, each blacked-out section. The photo of Nadine stared back, sunken eyes, thin lips pressed tight in fear. "You were silenced," Arya muttered. Jonah entered with a manila envelope. This came from an anonymous courier. No return address. Arya opened it to find a single grainy photo, Nadine meeting Marcus Vale in a dim bar. The timestamp was 2 weeks before Nadine vanished. Arya's voice dropped. She knew him. She trusted him. Jonah's eyes widened. That's motive. That's connection. But Arya wasn't celebrating. She felt it again, that crawling sense. Like she was chasing a shadow. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed. Jonah jumped. Arya didn't. "We're not alone," she whispered. The bar in the photo was real, the iron tap, tucked behind a junkyard in Eastview that wall. Arya entered wearing a gray trench coat, hood up. Inside, stale smoke clung to the air, and decades-old music hummed from a broken jukebox. The bartender, a wiry man in his 60s, squinted as she approached. "Looking for someone?" she said, sliding the photo across the counter. He stared. Never seen her. But the twitch in his brow betrayed him. Arya leaned in. "She's missing, probably dead, and you're sweating." He hesitated. "She came here a lot. With him." He nodded toward a shadowed booth in the corner. Arya turned. A scratch on the table still marked the initials, MEMV, etched in anger. She took out her phone and snapped a photo. "This place is the beginning," she whispered. "Not the end." Back at her office, Arya stared at a map now peppered with pins. Every location Nadine had visited, each tied to Vale's orbit. Jonah paced behind her. What if they're laundering, moving money through shell businesses? That bar. It was listed under a fake LLC. Arya nodded. "Follow the money." Hours passed in silence, broken only by keyboard clicks and paper rustles. Then, Arya froze. "Got something," she said. A dormant company linked to Vale had purchased a warehouse 2 weeks before Nadine vanished. No business activity. No permits. Jonah leaned over her shoulder. "That's our next stop." Arya grabbed her coat. But her phone buzzed again. Another blocked call. She picked up. A whisper. "You're getting closer. Stop now." She didn't flinch. "Not a chance," she replied, hanging up with trembling fingers. The warehouse loomed in the industrial outskirts like a tomb, silent, unlit, surrounded by rusted fencing. Arya and Jonah moved through the gate with flashlights. Inside, dust hung thick and untouched. No cameras, no locks. Like no one was ever meant to come back, Jonah whispered. Arya opened a back room and froze. Dozens of sealed boxes marked with legal firm tags sat in neat rows. "Evidence storage," she said. She opened one. Inside, charred files, half-burnt photos, melted cassette tapes. Jonah gagged. They were erasing everything. Arya picked up a scorched photo, Nadine, smiling, holding hands with a young boy. A label below, Roth Vale Custody Hearing. Arya's heart stopped. This wasn't about business, she said. This was personal, and that made it even more dangerous. They left the warehouse just before dawn. Back in the car, Arya clutched the photo like a relic. He fought to erase this. Nadine was going to expose him in court, she said. Jonah nodded slowly. Then she disappeared. And her son? Still missing, Arya whispered. Her voice cracked. No report, no search, not even a name. The pieces were forming something monstrous. They weren't just chasing a corrupt man. They were dragging buried bodies into the light. Arya closed her eyes. We leak the documents anonymously, no names. Just facts. Jonah frowned. That's risky. She looked at him. So is silence. He sighed. I'll prep the upload. The sun finally broke the horizon, washing Arya's face in gold. He thought it was buried, she said. He was wrong. The leak hit the news cycle before noon. Headlines splashed across every major feed. SEAL files expose secret custody battle. Arya watched the chaos unfold from her office, window blinds half closed. Commentators speculated. Lawyers postured. But the real consequence came in a knock at the door. A man in his late 50s, thin, suit 2 sizes too big, stepped inside. Name's Dorian West. I was Nadine Roth's lawyer, before she vanished. Arya's pulse quickened. You have proof? Dorian sat, eyes haunted. Proof no, but I've got memories, and threats. I buried them deep, until now. He pulled out a USB stick. She gave me this 2 days before she disappeared, told me to hide it, told me if I ever saw her name in the news again, bring it to the one making noise. Arya reached for it slowly. You just found her, she said. The screen blinked to life. On the drive, folders labeled with dates, court case numbers, and voice memos. Arya and Jonah leaned in, breath held. The first memo played, Nadine's voice, shaky, urgent. If you're hearing this, I'm already gone. Marcus is dangerous. Not just to me. To our son. I've been followed. Threatened. They said I'd lose everything if I speak. Jonah froze. She knew they'd come for her. Arya clicked through image files, photos of bruises, surveillance of unknown men outside Nadine's building, a restraining order draft never filed. The final file was encrypted. Jonah sighed. We'll need someone to crack this. Arya nodded, eyes hollow. Then we find someone, because whatever's behind that file, he wanted it buried more than anything else. In a cramped tech lab, deep in Southside, a hacker known only as Vex tapped furiously at a custom rig. Late 20s, hoodie, lip ring, and tattoos, they leaned back. You brought heat with this one. Arya stood beside Jonah, arms crossed. We need in. Vex smirked. You're not police. That's why I'm helping. Files flickered across the screen. Code scrolled. They used military-grade encryption, but slipped on metadata. Minutes passed like hours. Then, ping. The folder cracked open. Inside, a scanned document titled Witness Relocation Agreement, N. Roth. Arya inhaled sharply. She was going to testify against Vale in another case, and they hid her, or tried to. Vex's eyes narrowed. If this is real, someone in federal law enforcement helped cover it. The room fell silent. This wasn't just corruption, it was treason. Arya returned home to find her door slightly ajar. Every instinct screamed. She stepped inside slowly, drawers open, papers scattered. Her safe, empty. Her backup drive, gone. Someone had been here. Not to steal. To erase. Her phone buzzed. Line. A single text, next time we won't knock. She stood frozen. This wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. She looked around the room, trying to piece together what had been taken. The framed photo of her father, gone. The report he'd once helped her write, missing. They're cleaning house, she muttered. Jonah's voice cracked through on speaker. Don't go back there. I'm calling in help. But Arya was already walking toward the wall. Behind the bookshelf taped to the drywall was a copy of Nadine's sealed statement. They missed one, she whispered. Not enough. In a shadowed alley behind City Hall, Arya met with Deputy Marshal Elliot Rains, a grizzled man in his 60s, with a crooked tie and a conscience barely intact. You weren't supposed to find that file, he muttered. You helped her vanish, Arya said. And you left her son behind. Rains rubbed his temple. Orders from above. We were told Nadine was unstable. They used us to hide the truth. He pulled a worn folder from inside his coat. She gave me this before they took her. Said it was her insurance. Arya opened it. A photo of Vale shaking hands with a known federal prosecutor, sealed court transcripts, and a page with a single sentence circled in red. Marcus Vale is an informant. Her breath caught. Rains stepped back. You've just entered a war. Arya nodded. Then I need armor. The word, informant, echoed through Arya's mind like a war drum. She sat across from an ex-reporter, Lila Kendricks, now a recluse. Lila's hands shook as she poured whiskey into chipped glasses. I chased the Vale story once, she said. Got burned. They took my job, hacked my accounts, sent threats to my family. Arya showed her the folder Rains gave her. Lila's eyes widened. This was sealed by the Doge. Only 2 people could have signed off. Arya leaned forward. Who? Lila sipped. One of them's dead, the other, Assistant Attorney General Barton Ellsworth. Arya froze. Ellsworth buried the case? Lila nodded grimly. He didn't just bury it. He built his career on keeping it buried. Arya clenched her jaw. Then it's time to dig up his foundation. Ellsworth's estate towered like a fortress in the suburbs. White stone walls, security cameras humming. Arya waited inside her car, binoculars in hand. Jonah tapped at a tablet beside her. He's got offshore accounts, sealed property records, and a network of shell corporations dating back 15 years. Arya studied the house. He paid for silence. Jonah nodded. And Vale paid him back. A car rolled into the driveway. Ellsworth stepped out. Silver hair, pristine suit, flanked by armed private security. Arya's grip tightened. He doesn't think anyone can touch him. Jonah muttered, We need more than evidence. We need leverage. Arya narrowed her eyes. Then let's find his weakest link. Her voice was ice. Everyone has one. Even kings fall. Late that night, Jonah traced the financial breadcrumbs to Ellsworth's daughter, Riley Barton, a corporate consultant with a spotless record. But a quiet purchase stood out. A lakeside property registered under a fake name. Arya and Jonah arrived at the cabin before dawn. It was remote, quiet, too quiet. They moved carefully, flashlights guiding their steps. Inside they found a locked drawer. Jonah picked it. Inside, files stamped internal affairs, photos of Riley with Vale at exclusive retreats, bank transactions, and a burner phone. Arya flipped through the records, eyes narrowing. She's not just his daughter. She's his fixer. Jonah stepped back. We use this? Arya stared at the photo of Riley hugging Vale. We don't have a choice. The system's armored. This is the crack. Riley sat across from Arya in a private booth of an upscale cafe, elegance masking hostility. She wore a designer coat, hair slicked back, eyes calculating. You're brave, she said, but reckless. Arya slid a photo across the table. Riley and Vale embracing. You cleaned his trail, buried Nadine. Maybe worse. Riley didn't flinch. You think you can bring down my father with gossip? Arya leaned in. No, but I can make this public. Your career, your name, your future, tied to a monster. Riley hesitated. For the first time, a flicker of fear cracked her mask. What do you want? Arya's voice was low. I want you to deliver a message to Ellsworth. He's not untouchable anymore. Tell him his sins have surfaced. Riley's silence was her answer. That night, Arya returned to her apartment to find an envelope slipped under her door. No name. Inside, photos of Nadine tied up, eyes swollen, fear pouring from every frame. A date scrawled on the back, 3 days before her disappearance. Arya collapsed into the nearest chair, bile rising in her throat. They had documented her suffering. They kept it as leverage, or trophies. She gripped the images until her knuckles went white. Jonah called. We traced Riley's burner phone. It pinged near a secluded rehab center on the outskirts, 2 weeks after Nadine vanished. Arya whispered. She's alive? Could be, Jonah said. Arya stood slowly. Then, we stop chasing shadows. We find her. She packed the photos into a secure file, her heart thundering. For the first time, she had a direction. For the first time, a chance at rescue. The rehab center sat at the edge of nowhere, hidden behind trees, wrapped in fog, forgotten by time. Arya parked far from the gate. A soft glow illuminated a single window. Jonah adjusted his earpiece. Security's minimal, but this place isn't on any registry. Arya stepped forward. Then something's inside worth hiding. Inside, they moved past, hushed corridors and drugged eyes. A nurse paused them. "Can I help you?" Arya flashed a forged doji badge. "Internal audit, quiet visit." The nurse hesitated, then nodded. Arya found the restricted wing, locked, labeled, behavioral observation. Inside she saw a figure curled on a cot, head shaved, eyes hollow. Nadine Roth. "She's alive," Arya whispered. The figure didn't respond. Jonah's voice cracked in her ear. "We have to move fast. This isn't a facility, it's a prison." Nadine didn't speak. Her eyes fluttered, but wouldn't lock onto Arius. Her wrists bore faint bruises. Jonah checked the door. No guards yet. "They've kept her sedated," he said. Arya kneeled by Nadine. "It's me. I'm here to help. Do you remember Marcus Vale?" At his name, Nadine shivered. Her lips parted. A whisper. "Hey," said he'd, "find my son." Arya's breath caught. "Your son, do you know where he is?" Nadine's voice cracked. "Ellsworth sent him away, not safe." The door clicked behind them. Arya shot up. 2 orderlies entered. "You're not supposed to be here." Jonah stepped forward, buying time. Arya helped Nadine stand. "We're leaving. Call the press. Let the world watch." Jonah nodded. "Broadcast starts in 5. Arya locked eyes with the orderlies. "You want to stop us, go ahead, but cameras are rolling now." The escape was chaos. Arya and Jonah pulled Nadine into the back seat as tires screeched and shouts echoed behind them. Flashing lights burst through the fog, security vehicles in pursuit. "Hang on," Jonah growled, slamming the gas. Arya cradled Nadine. "Stay with me, you're almost free." Nadine mumbled, "My son. Caleb, they took him to the coast, hidden name." Arya wiped a tear from her cheek. "We'll find him." Jonah turned sharply, losing one tail but another closed in. Arya grabbed a signal jammer from her bag and tossed it through the window. The pursuing vehicle spun out as their GPS cut. Jonah whooped. "We've got air, just barely." Arya whispered to Nadine, "They tried to erase you, but now you're going to be heard." Nadine's eyes for the first time held a flicker of light. News broke by morning. A live stream from Aria's car showed Nadine's face, dazed but alive. The world erupted. Media vans swarmed courthouse steps. Protesters lined the block with signs reading, "Justice for Nadine and Vale must fall." Inside, Ellsworth's office remained dark. His aides scattered, his legal team vanished. Arya stood at the front steps, Nadine behind her in a wheelchair, hooded and protected. This woman was taken, drugged, silenced. And the people who did it were paid with your taxes. Gasps echoed across the courtyard. Ellsworth emerged from the shadows. "This is misinformation," he declared. Arya stepped forward. "We have records, medical files, and Nadine's own words." She turned to the cameras. "The system may be broken, but we are not. This is where silence ends." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Inside the courtroom, the silence was electric. Nadine sat beside Arya, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes focused. Marcus Vale entered last, flanked by his lawyers, smirking again, until he saw Nadine. His smile cracked. The judge entered. "Proceed with testimony." Nadine stood. Her voice wavered at first, then sharpened. "He threatened me, had me taken. I was told my son would die if I spoke." Gasps, "Doll." The prosecution moved fast, submitting audio, photographs, and sealed transcripts from Aria's investigation. Ellsworth was nowhere to be found. Rumors of his departure to a non-extradition country filled the gallery. As Nadine stepped down, the entire courtroom rose in stunned silence. The judge nodded solemnly. Court will reconvene tomorrow for charges against Marcus Vale. Outside, the world watched. Arya's whisper carried, "We broke the wall." The courtroom overflowed with anticipation. Arya stood alone at the prosecution table, her case files aligned with surgical precision. Cameras flashed behind glass partitions. The judge's voice thundered, "Proceed with cross-examination." Marcus Vale, slick and confident in a navy suit, leaned into the mic. "I'm a businessman. I protect assets. That includes people." Arya stepped forward, voice sharp. "Is that what you call kidnapping? Drugging? Threats?" Vale smiled faintly. "You've got imagination, counselor." She held up a photo, Nadine in restraints. Then another, financial transfers to Riley Barton's shell company. "You paid to silence her, and your network paid to erase her son." Vale's smirk faltered. The room gasped. Arya's voice cut deeper. "This isn't about power anymore, it's about truth. And your time is up." Even the judge looked rattled. Ellsworth's absence became its own shadow over the trial. The court clerk received a sealed letter, official resignation. The judge read it aloud. Gasps followed. Outside, helicopters followed reports of his private jet fleeing international airspace. "Coward," Jonah muttered from the gallery. Arya didn't flinch. She stood with Nadine outside the courthouse after recess. "They're starting to fall," she said. Nadine looked toward the crowd. "He always said no one would believe me." Arya placed a hand on her shoulder. "They believe now." Suddenly, an officer approached. "Judge just approved protective custody for Nadine and her son." Arya blinked. "Her son? He's been located? Safe." Nadine collapsed into tears. The weight of fear cracked. Arya wrapped her arms around her. For once it wasn't a battle. It was a beginning. The next day's testimony came from a voice no one expected, Deputy Marshal Elliot Rains. Called to the stand, he sat rigid, eyes flickering toward Arya. "I signed off on Nadine's relocation. Under orders. I knew it was wrong. But you don't say no to Ellsworth." The courtroom held its breath. "I saw the recordings. I destroyed evidence. I told myself it was for protection. But it was for power." Arya stepped in. "Why speak now?" Rains paused. "Because someone fought when the rest of us didn't." Arya blinked, her voice quieter. "Then help us finish it." Rains handed over a list of sealed deals, secret account logs, proof tying Vale to federal assets. With every page read, Marcus Vale's mask cracked further. The courtroom wasn't just watching justice. It was watching a system collapse. Marcus Vale requested to speak. Against advice, he stood before the court. "I did what I had to do," he began. "The system, it uses people like Nadine. I gave her security." Arya stood. "You gave her silence." The judge let him continue. "Everyone in this room pretends they're clean. I was just better at hiding the dirt." The courtroom buzzed with discomfort. Arya walked slowly to the center. "You're not on trial because you're flawed. You're on trial because you made pain a product and power your currency." Vale snapped, "And people paid for it." His voice cracked. Silence. That was the real confession. No longer smug, no longer in control. Just a man exposed. The judge nodded slowly. "Jury will convene. Verdict tomorrow." Arya sat. Her hands trembled. The storm was almost over. The next day, silence gripped the courtroom as the jury filed in. Faces unreadable. The foreman stood. "Woo, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts." A collective gasp thought way. Nadine covered her mouth. Arya exhaled sharply, tears silently tracing down her cheek. Vale's jaw clenched. No words left. The judge spoke firmly. "Sentencing will follow. Court adjourned." Applause erupted outside. Reporters swarmed. Jonah appeared beside Arya. "You did it." She shook her head. "We did." Nadine, still shaking, reached for her hand. "He can't hurt us now." Arya looked around, not triumphant, but grounded. This wasn't just a verdict. This was a reckoning. The courthouse doors opened wide. Light flooded in. Arya stepped forward. Behind her, a system began to rebuild. A week had passed since the verdict. Arya sat in a congressional hearing room, testifying under oath. Cameras rolled. Senators watched with cool detachment. "You allege multiple agencies were complicit?" one asked. Arya didn't blink. "I don't allege. I proved it, with evidence you ignored for years." Whispers rippled through the room. Another senator leaned in. "Do you believe the system can heal?" Arya paused, then replied, "Only if we stop pretending it isn't broken." She pushed forward a thick file, her compiled investigation. Faces tensed as pages turned. "This isn't just about Marcus Vale," she continued. "It's about who enabled him, and who's still doing it." Her words weren't loud, but they hit like hammers. This wasn't vengeance. This was exposure. And it had only just begun. Nadine walked slowly into a sunlit park, her hand tightly grasping that of a young boy, Caleb. They moved with quiet grace, avoiding attention. Arya watched from a distance. Jonah joined her. "Witness protection'll be temporary. After that," Arya smiled faintly, "they'll start over. Together." Caleb ran toward a fountain, Nadine following with hesitant joy. "She's learning how to live again," Arya whispered. Jonah nodded. "And you?" Arya's smile faded. "Still fighting." He tilted his head. "You don't have to do it alone anymore." Arya's gaze stayed on Nadine. "I know, but justice isn't a finish line, Jonah. It's a relay." The wind stirred the leaves as Caleb laughed. The sound was fragile, beautiful, a sound Vale once tried to erase. And now, it rang free. Later that night, Arya returned home and sat at her father's old desk. She reached into the bottom drawer and pulled out a photo, him in uniform smiling. "You always said truth was a battle," she whispered. "Turns out, it's a war." She placed his picture beside a thick dossier labeled Unresolved Cases. New names. New stories. The system was cracked, but still dangerous. She turned to her laptop. A news alert. Another whistleblower had come forward, citing connections to the Vale network. Arya's heart didn't sink. It ignited. She opened a blank document and began typing. Case file. Roth. Status. Closed. Next to be assigned. The fight hadn't ended. But neither had she. She leaned back, lit only by her desk lamp, and let the darkness surround her. Ready, Ray. Far away, deep in a concrete federal archive facility, a man in a dark suit entered a restricted records vault. His badge flashed. Dodge. Internal security. He moved to a locked cabinet marked, sealed, classified clearance 7. With swift movements he opened it, removed a red folder, and set it ablaze in a metal bin. Flames consumed Nadine's original testimony, along with decades of related files. He turned to a wall of similar folders, hundreds stacked like tombstones. Pulling out his phone, he typed a single text, "Crisis averted, clean." Then he exited into the darkness. Somewhere above, the world moved on, unaware of what had just been buried. Again. Because for every case brought into the light, 10 more slept beneath the floorboards. And some, no one ever dared to touch. Morning broke. Arya stood on the courthouse steps alone. No press. No cameras. Just the wind and the echo of battles fought. She looked up at the stone facade. Once an emblem of silence, now the site of something louder. Truth. She turned to leave, but a voice stopped her. "Thank you," said a young woman holding a folder marked, "Pending Civil Rights Complaint." Arya nodded. "You're not alone." The woman stepped inside. Arya watched her go, then whispered, "Neither am I." She stepped down slowly. One case was over. Another had just begun. And as she walked into the crowd, disappearing among hundreds, she carried no fame, no badge. Only fire. The kind that doesn't die. The kind that turns silence into war drums. The kind that never lets the system sleep again.